And now, down in the village, an everyday story of rural life. Today's episode, change partners and dance. It's the thought of old Arthur in a grass skirt that really worries me. Mind you, I sometimes wonder why I bother with a dramatic at all. I mean, we were at it all day on Sunday and we didn't get anywhere. Well, this isn't one of my favourite shows anyway. I mean, they wrote much better ones together. But it was a compromise to do it because we've been having problems with Mrs. Jones. You know, the editor's wife, thinks she's the star. The thing is, she's been having these singing lessons at the Polytechnic, where Michael Biggleswick works. Well, I'm not one to gossip, but it's obvious to everybody what's going on. And it's not the first time that Michael Biggleswick's name's been mentioned in connection with someone apart from his wife. Mind you, you would have thought that Mr. Jones would have noticed before. Not that I blame Mrs. Jones, mind you. What with Mr. Jones spending all the nights as well as the working days around at the Chronicle offices. Well, they're trying to win back all the readers they've lost with that new free paper that gets delivered. Anyway, Mrs. Jones has been having these singing lessons and she's got such a lovely voice now, she says, that she thought it would be a good idea if we did something a bit more operatic for a change. So she suggested this musical about the life of Dame Nellie Melba. Brian, you know my friend Brian, who has the hairdressers in the high street. He has the salon Highlights, used to be Vitaldo of Florence. Brian said that he wasn't going to appear in The Great Nellie, and that was that. Anyway, after a load of humming and hawing, we decided on Me and Aloha. And Mrs. Jones is going to play the head nun, which will give her plenty of chance to be operatic if she wants it. So we ordered the music from Bennett's, you know, in town, in the city. And I said to Sally Grovefield, you know, who plays Cinderella in the pantomime when we had the unpleasantness, I said to Sally that we should make a day of it. And she could drive Brian and I in her van. Well, it saves taking the towels and the dryers out of the back of the Volvo. And we could pick up the music and go to that new club that's just opened, Studs and Stallions, just around the corner from the Corn Exchange. Used to be a Wimpy. So we drove in and we had a lovely day. We picked up the music and went to that new Italian restaurant that's just opened, Mar Maison. And then we went along to Studs and Stallions. Well, it was all right if you like that kind of thing. Well, you'll never guess who was there. Young Charlie, you know, blonde. Does the poster round when Mr. Humphreys is off? Well, I had no idea he was, you know. Do you know, it's funny, Sally said, that makes 4 of us in the village now. And yet, if you go over Ambridge Way, there isn't anybody at all. Anyway, we had a lovely evening and Sally gave Charlie a lift home. Well, he had to sit in the back with Brian because I had to sit in the front to guide her. It's funny. She never can seem to find her way home in the dark. I mean, she drives well, but the last time she missed the right turning the other side of Melton Sudbury and we had to go all the way around the reservoir. Anyway, we've seen quite a lot of Charlie over the last couple of weeks. Well, Brian has, because they're both playing sailors together in Me and Aloha. And well, of course, I've been too busy with the piano as usual. Do you know it, Me and Aloha? Oh, you must know it. The film's been on television seems like every Christmas. Though Brian says they should never have given the part to that, what's her name? Because the woman who did it on stage in America was ever so much better. But, oh, you must know it. It's about this novice nun who was teaching English to the children of a king of a South Pacific island during the Second World War. There's some lovely numbers. There's Dream Your Dream, yeah? And there's the sailor's clam bake number. I like a clam bake with Waikiki Kiki, Honolulu Lulu too. Yeah, and that lovely number she did in the scene where she goes running along the beach, where she gets her habit soaking wet. Love is bursting in the ocean. Love is bursting in the ocean. Love is bursting in the sea. Love is bursting out in music. And music's bursting in me. Oh, it's a lovely number. Sally can't stand it, mind. And that's why she said she wasn't going to play the lead part of Lily or the Novice. And she's just going to play Waikiki. And the main part of Lily or the Novice is being taken by Pat Parfit, you know, has the big house on the corner of the new estate. 2 kiddies, Nigel and Melodine. Her husband's something in computer software hardwares. She's got a lovely voice. Well, she's in the church choir apparently, and they say you can hear her voice above everybody else's. I mean, mind you, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's a loud, it's nice, but it's a loud voice. Sally can't stand her mind, calls her Pat Perfect. Sally says she reckons they got a Hoover to Hoover the Hoover in their house. Mind you, you see, Pat and Sally don't really see eye to eye over a woman's place, what with Sally being, you know, they had a terrible argument about it one night. I nearly had to ask the vicar to say something. Well, Pat was going on about a woman's place being in the home. Mind you, as Brian says, how does she know about her home? She spends half her time over at Vautaldo's having her hair done. And she has Mrs. Cook comes in every day, or well, five days a week. Sally says she reckons Pat doesn't like people who are, you know. But in fact, she was only saying to me last Friday night, what a nice couple she thought Brian and I were. And in fact, she just said to me that perhaps I didn't spend enough time with Brian recently when Mrs. Neat came in her tizzy. Well, Mrs. Neat's doing the costumes again as usual, but she came in a terrible state on Friday night. She said she just couldn't stand the smell any longer. Well, they've got all this straw from Johnny Palmer's barn they're making the grass skirts out of, and it doesn't smell too good. Anyway, somebody came up with a brilliant idea. They all mooched around in the back room, and they came up with this great big bottle of Brut, you know, eau de cologne, that was left over from the last tombolo, and she took that away and she sprayed the straw with that, and well, it's changed the smell. Anyway, that was Friday night. Sunday, we decided to spend the whole day in the church hall going over the difficult bits and having the first rehearsal with the kiddies and doing what they call a technicial rehearsal. Well, I thought I'd be the first one at the church hall because I got there about 2:15, but Mrs. Neat was already there sewing and spraying away. Oh, I like Mrs. Neat. Now, wasn't it funny? She said to me what a nice couple Brian and I were and how lovely we've made the cottage. But she didn't get any further because that was when Mr. Chow from the takeaway came in with his son Darren. Well, Darren's playing the young prince too shy, but I can't say that he's too keen. It's funny, Mr. Chow, you can't understand a thing he says, but Darren, he's only 7, but he speaks, he's bright as a button, and he speaks English like Laurence Olivier. He does. It's remarkable, really. Well, nobody else has arrived, so I thought it might be a good idea to start teaching Darren his little song. COLOR spells colour. It's a lovely little song. COLOR spells colour, but BLUE spells blue. And BLUE's the COLOR when I am not with you. Yeah. Oh, it's a lovely number. It's what Lily or the Novice to teach to the young prince too shy on the first day when she goes to his father's palace. Well, as nobody had turned up yet, I thought I'd teach Darren the first little bit of the song. I'd sing it for him to sing it back to me. COLOR spells colour, but BLUE spells blue. No, it doesn't, he said. It's spelt with a U, colour. We did it in Janet and John Book 6 on Friday. It's spelt with a U. COLOUR. Aren't you clever? Isn't he clever? Said Mrs. Neat. Oh, I could have killed her. Well, Darren, I said, you see, in the show it's all let's pretend, and it's let's pretend that the lady who sings the song is American. Well, shall I do it with an American accent then? He says, and his dad, Mr. Chow, goes, oh, American accent, Starsky and Dutch, ha ha ha! And they both start falling about with laughing. Well, I couldn't understand what they were laughing at, and neither could Mrs. Neat, but she started laughing anyway. Anyway, the next thing is that everybody comes in from the Queen's Arms, so I thought they must have finally closed the place up, and I thought, well, forget about COLOR spells colour for the moment, and we'll go on to the Sailor's Cowboy number. Well, you see, it turns out that all the sailors on the island had come from the same part of America before the war started, and they sing this very, very jolly little song. There is nothing like a dame from Kansas City. No, there's nothing you could find that's half as dear. And there's no one you could name who's half as pretty. But get out of the way if she tries to rope a steer. Now that's going really well, that number, until it comes to old Arthur's lasso dance. Now, to give him his due, he got the job because he could really handle that lasso and really well, and he's been adding all these little twists and turns and that, and you see him practicing it all the time. Anyway, when we finally got everybody untangled, there was nobody really hurt, apart from Mr. Lovell from the bank. Well, he's never really got over that accident with the pikestaff on the last night when we were doing the student vagabond, and it must have been ever so painful. I mean, especially there. Anyway, Mrs. Neat took him off to the cottage hospital, and he should be all right for tonight. Anyway, when that commotion's all over, the sailors all decide that it's tea time, so they all troop off and back for a cup of tea. Just as Mrs. Jones arrives with Michael Biggleswick. Well, I asked her if she'd like to have a run through Dream Your Dream. Oh, it's a lovely number, Dream Your Dream. It's sung by the head nun, who used to be Honolulu. She sings it to Lilial the novice after Lilial has fallen in love with the king of the island. Dream a song of love. Dream your dream like the stars above, a star that will guide you onward like larks from the earth below. Dream your dream, the only love. Well, my God, can Mrs. Jones sing loud now? Can't wait to hear the duet between her and Pat Parfit in the second act. Anyway, when she's finished, I said, do you want to go and have a cup of tea? And she said, no. And she said, all innocent like, she said, where's Brian? And I said, well, he's having a cup of tea with the sailors. And she said, with Charlie, then? And I said, well, I expect so. And she said, suddenly acting as though she's still the head nun, she says, don't you think that Brian sees rather a lot of Charlie these days? How do you mean? I said. Well, frankly, darling, she calls me darling. Frankly, darling, everybody knows about you and Brian. We all treat you as though you were any other normal couple. But I think somebody ought to tell you that Brian and Charlie are carrying on. Well, I know that, I said. How do you mean? She said. Well, Brian told me when it started, I said. But aren't you jealous? She said. Well, I thought about it, Prue, I said, and I thought, well, no, it doesn't make any difference to the way Brian feels about me or the way I feel about him. It's just something different in his life, that's all. Well, that's not natural, she said. Well, in that case, Prue, I said, well, just at that very minute, there's this terrible noise from on stage, and we turn around, and there's the big palm tree all falling over, and behind it is Ernest Jones pulling himself up to his full height, which is not that much, and shaking Michael Biggleswick by the collar. All right, Biggleswick, he says, I've got some questions to ask you, and I want the answers right now. Now, what's been going on between you and my wife? What has been going on between Michael Biggleswick and Mrs. Jones? And will it help to boost the flagging sales of the Chronicle? Will Mr. Lovell ever really wear a grass skirt? And will old Arthur get on top of the lasso dance in time for the first night? Stay tuned for the next exciting instalment of Down in the Village.